too.
And what was the
So,
company that you built and sold?
well, I tell people I was in the. It kind of ties into what you were saying. I was in the glamorous moving and storage
Oh
business,
wow.
and we were relocating tens of thousands of customers, like from California to Illinois, from Florida to Virginia, those kind of things like that. And
Well,
so,
it may not have been glamorous, but I'm sure it was very lucrative.
well, it was. We had a very successful company, and actually, our culture was our secret sauce, and it was really our people that we had. We had our people gave us results that were far beyond traditional benchmarks in our industry. So I give our people a lot of credit for that.
And I will attest to that because I've worked with a few moving companies, for myself, for my family, for my friends, and I can't say it always goes as planned. Number one, and number two, there's always something that is a big disappointment, whether it be with the customer service, whether it be with the transportation itself, the delay to the transportation. There's a lot of variables. And I went through a handful of them, and I'm just like, man. So the fact that you're saying that, that's a big testament because that's definitely what is missing in that industry. So it's a shame we're not doing it anymore.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was very natural, and I was very fortunate that our people. When I sold the company, if you walked around and just talked to our employees, they would talk with you as though they own the company and not Bobby Albert. And you can't, you just can't buy that kind of, desire on their part. So
that just says that you treated them right.
Well, we really took care of our people. We really did. And, we paid fair wages, but we had high expectations for results, but we treated them very fairly, and that they knew that we cared for them. So
the one thing that I tend to, a missing link that I see in a lot of companies these days is the humanization aspect of things.
Exactly.
Like, hey,
that's the biggest gap.
Treat your people like human beings, and you'd be surprised just how long they would go for you and how much they would go to bat for you. And
exactly. Yeah, we didn't even have a hard time recruiting people because our employees were our biggest recruiters.
That's fantastic.
So, I mean, it didn't happen all the time, but, occasionally we'd even have a waiting list of people that wanted to come to work.
Wow. That's a huge compliment. That's a huge compliment.
Anyway, it was fun, but...
close that chapter.
Anyway, well, I tell people I'm living my second half of life. I was, blessed with the company buying, that bought us. But I just not one to sit still.
Yeah.
I got to keep going, So I'm doing this because I enjoy it and I have fun, and it's hard. Sometimes I think, golly, why am I working so hard? But anyway,
it's what God put you on this earth to do, my friend.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And the fact that you don't have to is a true testament to the fact that you were meant to.
Yes.
So that's definitely a blessing. So did you just feel a calling to wanting to, empower people and coach them and lead them and help them succeed?
Well, that's a very good question. This goes way back to 1987. I started seeing my work as a ministry and not a job. And that grew so large in our company that we had in our human resource department, HR department, we had to hire an extra person just to help us manage all of the logistics of how we were not only, it started out just ministering to employees, but we began to figure out how to minister to customers and suppliers, because we call them suppliers, but they were, you might call them contractors, and we had more business than we could handle, so we had to hire, we had about 3,000 contractors across the United States, and we figured out ways how to even minister to them as well.
That's huge, because it's one thing to have the culture within your own organization, but contractors, they're independents.
That's exactly right.
So that's a tough.
Well, I tell you what, and I thought it would happen this way, and it did. Is that the way we showed them just as much care as we did our employees. Our employees, I mean, they knew where my heart was to take care of the contractors, and it got where that they would be seeking us to do more business for us. Not because of the financial, because they just liked doing business with us, because they knew we would be fair. But we also had technology they weren't even experiencing. They didn't. We made it easy for them to do business with us. We were teaching them how to improve in their business. We were trying to lift them up. We took on a servant attitude. In fact, this kind of ties into the culture is, we had the traditional organization chart in our organization, and which, showed me at the top and everybody below that. But we still had that all the way up to me selling the company, but what it signals to the employees, they come to work for the person at the top of the organization. And but I turned it upside down, and I took on the role to serve, to equip, to develop the leadership team. They knew they had the responsibility to do those same things for people that reported to them, all the way up to the frontline employee. And we had the customer at the top of the organization chart. And since I was talking about seeing my work as a ministry, Colossians 3:23 and 24 was the foundational verses of our company. So our employees heard me say this at least 4 times a year, that we come to serve the Lord Jesus Christ when they come to work every day, and not Bobby Albert. I made it clear who we were really, really serving. So when we served the people on the front line, when we served the customer, we were serving the Lord Jesus Christ.
I love that, because that's foundational. That's your number one reason why you are there. And you also, like, people that are listening, whatever your religious beliefs are, there's profound there's a profound level of, like, respect and reciprocity when the owner, CEO, founder of an organization is essentially saying, like, you're not here to serve me. That's not what you're here to do. In fact, we're here to serve a higher purpose. Exactly. And if you were to take, not to say that I am, but, like, let's just say, there's a entrepreneur or business owner listening, which most of the time there is. If they were to take your structure and your methodology and reverse engineer it, it's almost like a guaranteed working formula, because people are people. They want to be treated right. Like, that's what's so funny about today's world, with all of the shouting and the talking back and the like, at the end of the day, like this is the other thing, Bobby, is I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, and I said, half the stuff that is said online wouldn't be dared to be said in a face-to-face environment. Like if you were at my house and you were sitting down on my couch, would you dare to say those things? 99% of the time you would not. You know, and that's where it comes from. Anyways, so did that formula that essentially you had developed based on faith, is that the foundation of the success that you've been able to find with this new company that you've started to help people?
Well, the name of our actually we're going through a rebranding process right now, but the rebranded name will be Values Driven Culture, and so we actually when I first started this second half of life, that was like a sub brand. And we had already the URL, but just chose to go ahead and make that the brand name. And culture is the fruit and not the goal. So many companies have made culture the goal, and what I mean, they say, well, we want our people happy, we'll bring in the ping pong tables, we'll give them all the food and beverage they want to drink free and all that, because they've made it a goal. But it has a lot to do with effective leadership, communication, people understanding who we are, why we exist, where we're going, what do we want to accomplish every day, what is the strategy to do that. And not only that, is we went to great lengths to engage our employees to be involved in the decision-making process on the tactical side of how and when and who's going to do this and how is it going to get done, when is it going to get done, and then we would measure, have measurable goals, and since we involved them so much in that decision-making process, that's where the ownership took place. So that's the reason why when I sold the company, I mentioned about interviewing people would talk, because what we were doing, it was as much as it was their company that was accomplishing these things.
Was it a tough adjustment for your team, for your staff?
No, not as much as you really would have thought. And of course, this was, I talk like it just happened, but it took, it was a process over years. And the reason why I say values driven is that we saw a significant occurrence happen in year 2005. For many years, our employees clearly knew our purpose, why we exist. They knew our vision, where are we going. They clearly knew, I call them super objectives, some organization would call them mission. They knew exactly what we wanted to accomplish. We talked about it all the time, but there was one thing I kept telling myself, there's something missing. Something is missing here. And I finally discovered it was our core values, who we are. And it just so happened, just researching about it, I came across 2 books by Jim Collins, and one of the things that we did with our people, we'd have our leadership team, we'd have these book reviews, and we'd take a chapter a month and sit down over lunch and talk about that chapter. But it really came down is the founder, which is basically me, that's where the core values come from, and the purpose. And so it took me actually 2.5 years to figure out who I was. I had to ask myself some very deep questions. It's kind of like your listening audience tonight or today is, here's the big question. Who are you? Who are you bone deep? Who are you? I tell you what, that's a tough question.
Most people don't know it, and and we sometimes can go entire lives. When you said it took you 2 years, I mean, it can take us our lifetime to be able to discover that.
Yeah, and I had to ask myself a lot of tough questions, like, well, why did I say what I just said? And why was it even important to me to say and do what I just said and did, kind of thing? What am I all about? I mean, I was digging into when I was a little boy, but I tell you what, just all of a sudden one day, it's like, I think I'm ready to figure out who I am. And I took a yellow tablet, sat down in I call it my thinking chair. My bicycle, I do a lot of bicycling, and that's also my thinking chair as well. But I sat down in my thinking chair at the house, and I pulled out my yellow tablet, and I did a T-chart, and I said, okay, what are the things that I have a passion for? What gets me fired up? What am I excited? I get really excited about. And I wrote a whole bunch of words down that kind of described that. And I thought, well, maybe I ought to look at on the other side of the coin, and when certain things are not done, what are the things that gets me upset, that I get fired up because they didn't get done, the way I would expect it, and and I made a big long list of words that describe that. I came up with about 30 words. Well, on both, total of both sides. And I noticed that what was interesting, they were 6 words that were identical on both sides. So I circled them. And I started looking at those words and looking at them, and I'm thinking, you know what? That is who I am. That is Bobby Albert. And that ended up being our core values. The reason why I'm sharing this is that in 2005, I introduced our core values to our people, who we were. And the way I introduced it, we shut down the company for a half a day. And we passed out T-shirts. Now, the T-shirts had a logo on it, and it had the words givers. It had the word givers on it. Now, the graphics company, when I shared our core values, they asked me, well, what are the key words in these 6 phrases here? Because they were very, like 2 to 3 word type of phrases. And I circled them. And when they came back, they said, do you realize the words, the letters, the first letter of each word spells out the word givers? Well, that fits me even as well, because I'm a giver, And so we passed out these T-shirts the day before, and everybody was like, what is Bobby going to do now? And so when they came, I would share with our people. There were basically 3 things I would share about. What we did, we played, on TV, the TV show called The Wheel of Fortune. Well, we played a game called The Wheel of Values. And you know how you guess the phrase. So on the first core value, we played that game, The Wheel of Values. We had tables. You had we had over 150 employees. So, we had, 6 people per table in the area we had. And so they played the game to guess what that first core value was. And the table that guessed that phrase correctly first, they had to yell out the word givers. And behind me was a big spinning wheel of prizes. Now, we didn't have like 60-inch color television, or anything like that, but there were nice prizes on that spinning wheel. So that table, they would select somebody to go that spinning wheel, spin the wheel, because everybody at that table was going to win something. And so, but then I asked that every table to go Well, after that, I would share where did that core value come from. They heard stories about, when I was a little boy, and stuff, stories they never had heard before. And then I had flip charts for every table, and they went to that flip chart to talk about how are we going to live out that core value. And that's the reason why it took us a whole half a day to go through to share with our people about those core values. But I keep saying this is the reason why I'm sharing all of this. From 2005 to 2011 is when I sold the company, and I don't know if you might remember this, Mo, but in late 07, 08, 09, 2010, the economy was in the tank. They call it the Great Recession.
Yep, that was fun.
And a lot of people lost their jobs or businesses and things. But even with that condition like that, our revenue and profits grew by 500%.
Wow.
So this gives you the background of why the brand name is values-driven culture, and culture is really talking about the people. And culture is really hard to describe. If you looked up some formal definitions, it'll confuse you more than afterwards. You're more confused actually than you were even before, because you can't figure out what did they actually say. So, but this is the best way I can describe core values. Hey, I mentioned earlier I love bicycling. I mean, I've ridden close to about 120,000 miles on my bike. So
stationary or like outside?
Outside on roads, on country roads and things. So so in Texas the wind blows, and so I'm always checking the velocity of the wind and the direction of wind, because I prefer to go against the wind going out, so when I'm tired it'll blow me back, and so
it's that strong.
But I tell you what, today was over 20 miles an hour, so, but that's a little high for typically, but that's one reason why I bicycle a lot often early in the mornings, because the wind is not near as strong, and of course during the summer it's a lot cooler too. But here's the question: has anybody ever seen the wind? Nobody's ever seen the wind, but we see the effects of the wind. If you went outside, like right now, because it's blowing pretty strong, you could see whatever leaves that are still left in the trees, you could see them shaking. The bushes are shifting back and forth. So, but you see the effects of the wind, but you don't see the wind. And that's the same thing about culture. You can't see it, but you see the effects. That's the reason why it is the fruit and not the goal.
Wow. I think that is the missing link to a lot of organizations.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I guess my question is so you sold in 2011. When did you decide to switch, or at least follow the thing that was driving you towards your purpose?
Well, it was always in the back of my mind, because for probably 20 years before selling the company, I was always being asked to speak or do a workshop at trade association meetings, and even locally people would invite me, to share about my leadership style and those.
You're a very good storyteller. It's very engaging. This is the least that I've talked on a podcast. I'm just listening.
Well, thank you for the encouraging, compliment there.
It's a big one.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, so people have been asking me, so it was kind of in the back of my mind, but I'll be honest with you, after I sold my company, it's like, I got to keep doing something. I'm not going to sit around the house. I'm not someone to go to the beach and just sit there and look at the waves coming in.
That would like kill your spirit. I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of, I played with a lot of different ideas, and finally I just said, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do, and so that's the reason why I developed, so I've published 3 books, and I've got 4 more books coming out.
What are the 3 books, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, the first one was called Principal Profits. The second one is called True North Business. And the third one, which is a little different, the first 2 are about leadership and workplace culture. The third one is a little different. I took what I've learned in leadership and what I've learned about culture and applied it. It's called the freedom paradox. And applied it about how we can reunite the United States of America. And
that'd be a beautiful thing.
And so that's the book. I teach a lot in the book. I talk about the same kind of things I have in the business books, but I show application of what's going on around us. I don't know how to explain it, but I've just been blessed to see things that other people just don't see that's going on around us.
And that's why you have to do what you're doing, because people don't see it. And so you got to be able to profess that, to communicate that, to educate, to share, however which way you can do so. I mean, this is just one platform. Writing a book is another. Your speaking engagement is another. So any opportunity that you have. Now, is it just you, or did you build an organization around this new venture, or are you just trying to keep it just you and focus on what you're trying to?
No, we have a small staff of people. Everybody works remotely. And some people work more hours than others, kind of a thing. And we contract out a lot of other activities that are beyond, that takes more specialization. And so that's kind of how we've structured this organization.
And the small staff that you do have, same philosophy and everything applies?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, we all see our work as a ministry and not a job.
I got to say, Bobby, I love that so much, that you see your work as a ministry and not a job. Like, that really resonates with me. It's going to make me think about what I do on a day-to-day basis a lot differently. So I appreciate that. That's really big.
Well, we'll see. Jesus told his disciples, hey, the Son of Man came to not be served, but to serve. And that's kind of the undercurrent of the upside down organization chart that I shared with you earlier. My strength, of course, is in the leadership area and strategic thinking and planning and those kind of things like that, and pointing people to the essentials that you need to regularly communicate to your people with clarity. The other, of course, is engaging the employees. How do you do that? And we had an actual physical button that we would bring up. It's called the 1, 2, 3, and what that stands for is that at the beginning of the decision-making process and before you make a decision is ask yourself 3 questions: is who can help me make a better decision, who will have to carry it out, and who would be impacted by it, and get them involved in that decision-making process. And that's the engagement. And, what we're seeing right now, they talk about the great, resignation that's going on. I coach not only senior business leaders, but also senior leaders of nonprofits, educational institutions, and even pastors of churches. And it's a pretty amazing right now. It's like something's in the water, and I think it's something going on in our culture that so many of these leaders are, the easy term that you hear, they're burnout. They feel like their legs have been kicked out from underneath them. They're just about to give up. And I'm sitting there coaching them, talking them off the edge of the ledge to, before they jump, because the opportunities are great right now. But what I've observed, it's kind of another paradox, is that it's fascinating that we're experiencing more and more and heavier of a top-down type of leadership. You heard, when I'm talking about turning the organization chart upside down, I'm leading from the bottom. I mean, I'm in the tank, I'm in the cellar, and but we're gravitating more and more because so many businesses, churches, nonprofits, their results are a lot less than they used to be. It was always kind of top down, but COVID really brought the results down. And the top leader is sitting there thinking, if it's going to be, it's up to me, and I've got to push harder and harder. So the employees or members at a church, all they hear is just, give me more, give me more, give me more. And but what happens is that the engagement of people being involved in that decision that's impacting them or they have to carry out, it's becoming less and less. And that's there's a feeling at people below the top leadership in our country, in general, is that with the mandatories, mandatory, this and that, and there's more rules and regulations, and you're being told how you live and all this, and people are just flat fed up. But this is one thing Jesus said that, he told us the mission of Satan is to steal, kill, and destroy. And just think about all around us, this is being destroyed. This is being destroyed. Things that were very natural and common, the way things were going on around us. It's like everything's turned upside down, and it's because it's being destroyed. And so, but it's fascinating. What's scary is that if the will, you said something earlier, if the will of the people, if they give up, the people at the top of the country, of an organization, this is the reason why you got so many people, the great resignation. People are they're ready to jump the fence to go to a greener pasture, rather than trying to make the pasture that they are in greener. They're going to I call it expedient decision making, is that it seems quicker and easier, and there's more self-gratification and short-term gain if I just jump the fence and see if I can get get on a greener pasture somewhere. But the problem is when they jump over there, there's a whole new set of problems when they jump on the other side that they didn't even know about. So my coaching is where you are, just make the pasture greener where you are first before you start looking on the other side of the fence.
I think that is beautiful, and I mean, I had that mentality for a second too. You know, I wanted to move. I was like, this place is getting terrible. Like, Oregon was such a beautiful state, and you know, now it's not safe, and all this is going on. Instead of trying to make it better here, I was thinking of just jumping ship, and I honestly I would have, to be frank, you know, if I didn't get outvoted, I would have.
Yeah. Well, it's very natural right now. It's where we are. That's part of what's going on in our culture, but it's fascinating that the senior leadership of our country and in various organizations, they think that if they push their people harder with rules and regulations and job requirements, and push them harder and harder, they're going to get the results up. And it doesn't work that way. They're going to break. And when they break, their wheel is going to break. And then everything, everything's going to tumble.
And it's going to be catastrophic.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So what do we do?
Well, it really takes leadership.
Yeah.
And people will do what people see. If they start seeing the leadership demonstrate that, hey, I really care for you. You really belong here. I'm going to allow you to participate in the decision-making process. I'm going to not only train you with job skills, for example, but I'm going to develop you as a person to be all that God wanted you to be. And so that was one of my strengths, because I tried to work on the people to be all they could be, because I was looking beyond the job they did every day. I'm thinking, I want to help them be a better dad, a better mom, a better granddad, a better grandma, a better friend. That's where I was looking at. And I tell you what, these are just simple little tactical things.
They are, but they make so much sense, Bob, because here's the deal. If our government leaders had your perspective, I mean, just imagine where we would be right now. But it's like, and listen, I don't know everybody's story. I don't know our government leaders personally, so I can't sit there and make an accusation. But based on what's happening within my own current state and what I'm seeing across the board nationwide, it just sounds like it's not working, and it's not the best course of action. And to keep stuffing our faces with these mandates and these rules and these regulations and limit our way of life, like, that's not what this country was founded upon, and nor was it the reason why so many people migrated here and got to create a life that they could only imagine. You know, so that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, you just touched on, I said that my third book was the Freedom Paradox. Well, this is the paradox. I'm not a history buff, but to write the book, I had to dig really deep in, do a lot of research on early American history. And what I found is the core values of our country when it was founded was freedom and responsibility, talking about personal responsibility. And the purpose was religious freedom. That's the reason why people came to America to begin with. But here's the paradox. The more we behave irresponsibly, the more freedoms we lose. But conversely, the more we behave responsibly, the more freedoms we gain. That's the paradox. and it ties in with helping people be all that they can be, so they can take personal responsibility rather than told what to do. And that's the reason why you're experiencing. I'm experiencing this. I mean, I'm trying to push back. I think there's, but you can just imagine in a business, for example, or even at a church or a nonprofit, if the senior leadership is pushing harder and harder, and the decision making is done at the top, that's the reason why employees. That's the great resignation that's going on. Employees are fed up.
It's like you're trying to swim upstream against a current.
Yes.
Like it's tough. It's very tough. Almost impossible.
It is. Yeah, well, I'm thinking, hey, I'm a little Bobby Albert. How can I make a difference? And because it's too overwhelming. And but I tell you what, it's kind of like me living this second half of life. I am not going to give up. I am not going to give in. But I some days I do think like, oh God, man, this is hard, but I am just not going to give up. And because I just, for me, I think part of it is because I have an abundance mindset instead of a scarcity mindset. And I just see the opportunities all around. Mm-hmm. But a scarcity mindset person, it's like they're trying to protect, they're trying to maintain what they've got, and they'll fight for that. And I think that's kind of part of it.
Isn't that funny though? The scarcity mindset's like the more that you try to hold on to something, you get the opposite effect.
Oh, that's the paradox. Yeah. Well, just say I use an illustration of a farmer. When a farmer's casting seed, the one that has the abundance mindset, they will cast the seeds in a very abundant way, because there's more seeds coming in their mind. There's plenty of seeds. But the scarcity mindset, that farmer is only going to cast only a few seeds. And because they're afraid they're deficient. They feel that they'll run out. So they'll hold back. And so they'll cast fewer seeds. But you know what's going to be when it comes to harvest, which one's going to have the abundant harvest. And I tell you what, if you don't cast seeds, you're not going to have a harvest. So it's...
that's another lesson that you just mentioned. It's so crazy how many you're mentioning. But that's a lesson in itself, is like you can't expect to have a abundant harvest and on any level if you're not planting seeds throughout, the time that you need to be planting those seeds. It's like,
yes. Okay,
so you start a business, you need customers. Okay, well, what are you doing? Are you spending 2-3 hours a day trying to collect business and on the phones and making phone calls and planting your seeds? Are you doing what you need to do? Are you creating the environment that you need to create? Like anything that you do can be applicable. And it's just, most people, I think, here's the thing that I've noticed is they're too impatient. They're too impatient and they want the results now. I mean, we live in a almost instantaneous results driven society.
Yes.
Where we need satisfaction, gratification yesterday.
Yes,
and
exactly.
It's that kind of like attention deficit disorder, societal, thought process that it's not like it's just affecting us negatively. And like, do you remember? I mean, you're a little older than I am, so you might remember just a tad. But like when I don't know, you had like a Saturday or Sunday. And maybe you had a television, maybe you didn't. Definitely had a radio, but you didn't have a cell phone, right? You didn't have a mobile phone, you didn't have a tablet, you didn't have any of that stuff. So you were limited. You could either go outside, or what I would do is you sit down, you read a book. whether it be a fictional book or a nonfiction book, but you get to slow down. Yeah. And you get to be with your thoughts, and you get to experience life. And you're not expecting something instantaneously. And it's that pressure that didn't exist at that time that allowed you to live and thrive and learn who you were and what you're about and what you like and what you don't like. And you get to enjoy the process. We don't enjoy the process anymore at all. We just want to be. That's it. I put on my Instagram that I'm a CEO of a company. That's it. I'm a CEO of a company, and that's the end of it. I'm going to go scam people and make as much money as I can selling something that I don't actually do. And I know that sounds like a joke, but I've seen that so many times. It's almost disgusting.
Oh, yeah, exactly. This is one thing when I'm coaching senior leaders, is that I'm helping them understand is that the position doesn't make the leader. The leader makes the
Amen
position.
To
that. And so there's a lot of truth in what you were talking about there, and we're in a, but see, I just see the things we're talking about. I see. With the abundance mindset, to me, it's win-win. With a scarcity mindset, somebody has to lose for me to win.
Yeah.
And I teach on it's called principle versus expediency, and that's what you're touching on, is that this immediate gratification. And what I've learned is we make choices, and our choices make us. And we're making choices moment by moment. But those choices we make typically are either driven by fear or driven by faith. And the one that's driven by fear is this short-term gain, self-gratification immediately. I mean, I want it now. But what happens over time is that you'll incur long-term negative consequences. And I saw something just recently, is that consequences, it's kind of like you can't take back the consequences. No. Because it's kind of like taking a bottle of water, pouring it on the ground, and trying to pick up the water.
That's great.
You can't. I mean, you can't do it. It's impossible. And that's what happens to consequences. And when people get caught, typically they are, with their consequences, they typically are not regretful for what they did that caused the consequences. They're more that they got caught. And so, but the one that operates out of faith, they look at, they're looking at what they do, talking about process, like you mentioned earlier, that it's an investment. They're willing to do short-term sacrifices. And what I've seen over time, this is living in a principle way. The other way is an expedient way. The principle way, you'll end up incurring long-term growth and success. That's the difference. But the one that on the principle operates on a principle basis, they are. I use the term they're character driven. The other ones are emotional driven.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference between operating. I always tell people, hey, your feelings will always override your intellect. And so many people are operating, like, you commented way earlier about, social media, about people just operate on their feelings.
Yeah. That's like 90% of people today.
Yeah. But this just gives you an example of a character-driven is they do right, then they feel good. But a person that is motion-driven, they want to feel good first, then they'll go do right. it's amazing when you start operating out of principles rather than out of your emotions, the difference that it can make in your life.
Yeah, I really believe that takes you out of scarcity mindset, and scarcity for people listening isn't just money. Like it's fear. It's being your day-to-day processing is being run by fear, and that fear is then inhibiting you and making you make decisions that if you were to step outside of yourself and think logically and like you said, character driven, based off a principle, your decisions would be clearer and they would be long-term plays that would feed you for a lifetime. And you know, and also I also think that also ties into the law of reciprocity, which is not what most people think. It's not whatever I'm going to do something for you, you're going to do something for me. You're adding to the toll of good in the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
one of my
core values is add value to people. And to me it's we've talked about it earlier about serving, lifting them up so I can serve them more. But the key is I don't expect anything in return. But I've just learned
the kicker, Bobby. How many people do that?
Yeah. Not too many, but the thing is, you know what I've learned? With that attitude, not expect anything in return, it's fascinating the return I get because I'm not even expecting it.
Were you always like that?
I don't know how to explain it. Even back, I tell you what, when I was, my dad taught me a lesson that I can't explain it, but I shared that I was in the glamorous moving and storage business. Well, when I was 12 years old, my dad, because I was anxious to go out on a job. When I was 12 years old, my dad let me go out on my first movie.
Oh, okay.
All right. So the first time that I went out, right before I went out, he said, "Now, Bobby," and I was very fortunate to hang out with my dad a lot as a little boy. But right before I went out, he said, "Now, Bobby, when you go out there, I don't want you to act like the boss's son." Well, I can't explain it, but as 12 years old, I knew exactly what he meant. So when I went out there on that job, I did the kind of work that nobody wanted to do. And back then, it was folding the pads, the moving blankets. Some people call them blanket. The reason why, and I'm embarrassed to tell you, back then, I mean, we're talking about a long time ago, they were never clean. They were filthy dirty, and it was the dirtiest job you could ever do. But also, I would run from the truck to the house and the truck. I would take one break to everybody's two breaks. But I took on the role as I was there to serve them and not to be served because I was the boss's son. And so, but that attitude, I think it played out because it's amazing. As a little boy in elementary school, I was always asked to be the captain of we'd go out for recess, I was always asked to be the captain of, if we played flag football or something like that. I just as a little boy, I've always been asked to be the president of the club or, I never have sought out a leadership role except what I'm doing right now. So it's always someone has asked me to do it. And so that's just one of the things I'm just gifted at.
That's wonderful. I share a similar story. I was fortunate to come from a family of entrepreneurs. We were dirt poor when they started, but eventually got to a point where I was working with them, and I learned a lot at a very young age. And I was very similar to you. I was able to really pick up on. I was older than you. I was probably like 15, but I I was pumping gas at my uncle's gas station at, after school, and then on weekends I would do like the graveyard shift, because he would he would go with me, and that was like the time that this is during the beginning when he was first starting out, so he was there, and so I was like, okay, and 15 years old, under the table, obviously, because I was legal age to be on payroll, but there was. I mean, I saw things that I felt like I should have never seen at 15. There were some interesting people.
Yeah.
It was fascinating, but I learned very simple things like how to count my money and how to budget and understanding dynamics between, manager and employee, and there really isn't a difference other than, like you said, it is leadership. And I saw my uncle treat his shop like, not only did he own it, but that it was, he had this profound respect, like, and that just, you were able to see that, and that went everywhere he went. And I remember one time, this is my last thing I'm going to say. He also owned some like dollar stores as well. He's had a bunch of stuff. I remember I was in a store one day and there was like a toy or something on the floor. He said, would you mind picking that up? I'm like, sure, absolutely. He said, if you're ever in a store and you see an item on the floor next to the rack, I want you to pick it up and hang it up. I said, why? He said, because somebody has worked very hard to make sure that everything looks neat and organized, and there's just some people that are disrespectful and will disrespect other people's work. And I never forgot that. Crazy.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. Yeah, that's one reason why if I, over the years I've borrowed, like a lawnmower or something from, I always made sure I returned it in better condition than I got it, because someday I may need to borrow it again, so.
Yeah. Where can people find you? Are you taking on any clients? Are you doing any speaking gigs? If somebody wants to work with you, how can they do that?
Yes, I do coaching and speaking and workshops and consulting, and people can get. It's pretty simple. They can at our website. It's pretty simple. BobbyAlbert.com. BobbyAlbert.com. And Mo, if it's okay with you, I can give your audience a free gift. It's a simple link. It's BobbyAlbert.com/ and it's treated as one word, culture checkup. BobbyAlbert.com / culture checkup. And that would help people that's in an organization that would like to do a comparison of what their cultures are.
Oh, wonderful. So it's like an assessment, a health assessment about their...
Exactly.
I love it. Thank you for that. Yeah, I will definitely add that into the description for this podcast. That's phenomenal.